Dad did a lot of work on this thermostat housing. This thing was severely pitted. We are on, what layer is this? Number 3 of JB Weld?
Well, yeah.
Trying to build this up, and we have this one over here that is off of a 7J, but it is not correct, and these 4G ones are almost impossible to find. But the 7J, you're probably wondering why we're not using it, but it has this weird flange here that goes over to the fuel tower that we don't have on 4G. Otherwise, they look about the same. This has also got an extra port on both sides here.
Right.
And this one just has the one for the thermostat.
But the main thing is this, it goes into the fuel tower.
And we do not want that.
No.
That's an afterthought mess that they ended up doing away with later. The good news is the one off of 7J is an excellent pattern that we can measure off of to make sure that we're getting everything correct in here. Once we get everything close to where we want it, I've got a pack right here of silicone O-rings that we'll put on each side of the thermostat to help seal it. Dad just removed the oil pressure gauge. Now he's removing the water temperature gauge. We're trying to get this straightened out for our thermostat housing neck. And I'm hoping, I wish that I could have got a rebuild kit for this before Acmok closed the store. Remarkably, 4G actually had the gauge, and it's not great, but I'm hoping I can do some magic on this and get it rebuilt. Our sending unit doesn't look terrible. It needs cleaned up.
Let's pull him through here.
All right. This is a shame. I got a lot of rust and a mess in there. I'm going to see if I can take it apart, maybe just clean it up. I really don't know what to do. I'd love to keep this original gauge with 4G. It might be warm enough today so we can get a third coat of paint on all of this. We got a few places it's a little thin, a few things we'd like to touch up. And we want to make sure this radiator is completely good and covered before we put it together, because it's going to be a little hard to touch up with the radiator core and everything in it. Dad said use this and just make a gasket and a flange and just seal that off.
That's all we got to do.
Probably this is the better one.
Well, I like where the thermostat housing is so much better. It's
well, we wouldn't have to do it. We wouldn't have to worry about it. And
no.
The JB Weld is okay, but it's already chipped. That leads us to an interesting thing I just noticed in our parts book. This is the 4G1 to 4G9986 parts book, and that 4G1, that's the RD4s. Same thing virtually. There's some few parts differences. Essentially, our 4G is the same as an RG4, other than the logo on the radiator and the side tanks. There's some carriers and a few other minor things. The fuel tower here on 4G, this is the one we're going to use. It has the strainers. These are not disposable. There's no pressure gauge or anything. This was effective with 4G9607, and you can see here all the way back to the beginning, it used virtually the same fuel tower as we're going to use. But I did note right here that they have a fuel filter group for field installation. And this is the newer fuel tower, similar to the one on 7J. It has the blind flange that comes off the water neck, like on our 7Js, that was supposed to warm up the fuel to help it atomize and ignite. But that was just a kind of an afterthought, something they started late on. At any rate, I think that the upgraded fuel tower should have been this. Should have been the one similar to the one on 7J. This is a different part number than the one off of our 7J. It's not exactly the same, but same principle. So they were supposed to upgrade this in the field to this style of fuel tower and that style of water neck for the thermostat housing. So we may just go ahead and use that other thermostat housing and put a blind flange on it. where it's supposed to go over to the fuel tower. We're having trouble anytime we're changing anything from what is supposed to be on our model of a tractor. It bugs me. I think it bugs Dad a little less, but I really wanted to keep this original, but realistically, at least the year tractor that we have, they only made less than 90 of them that year.
Yeah, about 100 that year.
So the chances of finding these parts are pretty slim. I don't know if I'm going to be able to fix this one. I'm afraid that this is already cracked and broke right here. So I don't think that this is going to come off like I really wanted. Kind of a lip right here. If we could get something underneath there, I could maybe pry this up. I think it probably got water in it and froze. Well, there's the glass. Dad's making a gasket for the thermostat. I think we've landed that we're going to go ahead and paint both of those thermostat housings, and we'll decide later. I'm going to go out to the D4 parts store and take a look at the gauge that we have out there on the other 7J. Looks like it's missing. Looks like all we got there is the oil pressure. What's 5T have over here? I was hoping for the remnants of one I could save part of it. This is not going to be correct either. I might be able to save this. This collar right here is what I need. Let's go see what the one on Carl looks like. Our 22's missing one too. It's got one. I may be back for that. Well, what do you think? We find what we're looking for? Well, if I get this off, I got something out there I think will work. There it goes. So I think this holds the gauge in, but this was already separated. I think it's just pressed on. And now the gauge should come right out of that. Yeah, there we go. This might be salvageable, honestly. Looks like this is actually two pieces. So there's a piece inside there where the glass and the gasket sit on, and then the chrome bezel that sits outside of it that press fits into this housing here. There's a little remnants of a gasket that fits back in there. And I don't know how I could get this thing apart. I'm going to have to do a lot of research here. Looks like there's maybe a little clip back there that I could take out and pull this gauge off of here. I'd like to rebuild it. Externally back here, it looks fairly clean other than this spot of rust up here. I'd really love to use this original gauge off of 4G. Before I get too worried about whether this gauge is going to be fixed or not, I think I'm going to dunk it in some water, some hot water, and see if it's even going to work. Every time I get this stove out, I want to make a cup of coffee. Got this sender here. You guys keep an eye on the gauge and tell me if it moves. Yes, it works. I never got it above about 100 and... actually about 125.
Well, that's about all you're going to get your water to.
Yeah. I have this 4S8409 gauge that I found, new old stock. And the threads are correct up here to make that work. I guess it'd just be a matter of whether it will fit in that bezel, or if I can make it fit somehow. Yeah, it's a lot smaller. It's much smaller than what we have. So I've also got this 224-334 water temp gauge. I'm going to just kind of dunk it in that water and see if it works. Looks like that one's going to work too, but again, that gauge is way too small to fit in here in the stock location, so I'm going to put this one on the back shelf for a little while, and we're going to work on something else for a bit. I'm going to try and get this nut off the sending unit. We've been trying to get it off of here, but this one's been rounded out. It's very stuck. I'm going to heat it up with my tool and see if I can get it loose. Ha! Whoa! This thing just pegged that gauge. Well, we know the gauge works. Yeah, it just pegged it the other direction. out the flange that's going to cover this port up here. There it goes. That is a mess. No wonder it wouldn't come out of there. That thing is completely corroded. I'll get it cleaned up. Got a hot potato? Yeah. Dad's working on the flange over there. I got this cleaned up here on the wire brush a little bit. It does work. When I put that magnet induction heater on here, it pegged it. I noticed before even, it's slow to return, so not sure I'm going to use this. But I did get this really nasty looking nut off of here, and it actually threads in here quite well now. So we can reuse that as well. I've got a new copper O-ring that'll fit in here just perfect. This gauge, it's going to have to just be shelved for now and put on the back burner. I'll have to figure something else out. Well, does it fit good?
Go drill it.
Yeah.
Let me see ya.
Dad's grouchy because we're going through a lot of work here and we might not even use it, but we're leaning back towards using the original one. I think the JB weld will be fine. We'll put some silicone. I got O-rings for the thermostat. I think we're going to put them both together and paint them. I'm going to pull these bolts out of here. We're going to use these. I'll clean them up because they're cat bolts, and we want as many cat bolts as we can in this project. And so far, they're all cat bolts, aren't they?
Pretty much, yeah. I don't recall. I mean, with all the tractors we have plenty of bolts now.
Yeah, we've been good. Got that snug down with some cat bolts, the correct ones. We're going to tape it up, put some primer on these. We'll get a little color on them tomorrow.
Let them sit there in the sun.
Yeah. This is the lower water system pipe that comes off the bottom tank on the radiator. And I don't have a better one. This has got a lot of pitting in it, and it has a couple of superficial spots of damage. We're going to pull this out of here. I'll show you. Right there, it's actually been brazed. I'm guessing something might have rubbed on here and worn through, and it's got a little ding in it over here, but that's purely cosmetic. Just like everything on this tractor, it's got a lot of scale internally. But I think we're going to clean it up, paint it, and probably go ahead and use it. So I was wrong. We do have one here off of 7J, the first parts tractor, Hannah, Montana. And
well, wait a minute. Is this 7Js or 4Gs?
That's 4Gs. It was with 4G stuff.
Because see, this is bent.
They're a little
different. Although
no, they're the same.
They are the same, but this has got a little more crook in it here.
Yeah.
You know what?
I say we do like we did with the top part. Clean them both up, paint them both, and we'll figure it out later.
This has got a little better flanges on it than the other one.
I think that was the one on 4G, honestly.
It does have a little different bend in it.
It does have a little bit more pitting.
Yeah, I think some dirt and stuff laid there.
Yeah, I do too. Well, don't poke your needle scaler through it.
I'm not.
As usual, Dad's out cleaning. He just finished up all of these lines going to the injectors and the oilers and throttle linkage. He's going to clean up the fuel, this isn't really filter, screen tower next. And he's been working on some throttle parts. What's this one?
This is the end cap for the starter pinion.
Okay. Filing the surface to make sure that there's no burrs or anything that's going to tear up a gasket.
Or keep it from bolting up tight.
And you just removed there's an O-ring here. The little one, it looks like.
Yeah, I think that's just for this overflow drain.
Yeah, but there was one around here too.
Yeah, that's a major one there.
Yeah, so we got one of those ordered. And Dad's got this thing needle scaled and cleaned up really nicely. I don't think it's sunk in yet that we actually have extra parts sitting outside. And I'm still in the mentality of, where am I going to get this? Where am I going to find this? I don't know if I can find this. So sometimes we get lucky. We do have a few things, a few more things. Dad's mixing up some paint. Uncle Butch is out here making sure we're doing things right, because we don't know what we're doing. Maybe Butch does. Anyway, we're gonna put another third coat on everything out here, because the second coat didn't completely cover good, and we found that out a long time ago. There may be even another fourth or fifth. We'll have to see. But we got these other parts hung up here so that we can get a coat of paint on them as well. I think we're about out of paint on this batch, so we're going to mix up another one, and everything's getting very yellow. What do you think, Dad? Are we happy?
Yeah, I think this will work nice.
It looks a lot better.
Yeah.
We were kind of on the fence, but it definitely needs another coat, and there'll be some touch-up later. Now that we got that coat of paint on and it's drying, I'm going to take this trim bone tool, kind of straighten some of these fans. This is 4G's original radiator core. Over here I've got another one that we got with all the D4s we bought. That one's in really good shape, but it has one dinger down in the bottom that I'm a little bit not sure about. Between the bone tool and the needle nose pliers, I think I got this in pretty good shape. I am going to blow this out one more time, make sure it's good and clean, and I think it is. The dirt, after I had soaked this and blew it out with the pressure washer, it dried up again, and all that dirt has fallen out from in between the cores. So we're going to just spray a very, very light coat of high temperature flat black paint on there, and we'll get to assembling this one. The paint cured really well last night. It stayed 45 degrees in here all night, so above freezing well enough to cure it. It's still going to take a while to get it cured correctly. Ideally, this will be ready for next week. We can put the radiator together. I know this video was kind of a hodgepodge, putting things together, a lot of prep work, just trying to sort things out. And I've been spending the last week really just trying to source parts and make sure that I have everything so that we can put the fuel system together, we can put the radiator together, and we'll be good to go. For now, I think I need to just put everything inside, because looks like there's a storm coming. I do want to thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. I think we're about out of paint on this batch, so we're going to mix up another one, and everything's getting very yellow. Oh, yellow. Ever since childhood, for my whole life really, I've suffered from this addiction. Far out, man. Whoa. Way cool. Totally awesome, man. Far out. I think it might be time to finally talk about my addiction. So yeah, it's true. I'm addicted to yellow iron and I can't help myself, but I can quit anytime I want to.